everyone, welcome to Wandering DMs. I'm Paul.
And I'm Dan, and on this episode of Wandering DMs, we're recapping our house convention from this weekend. And apologies to viewers, we're on a little bit later than normal. Some of us, like me, I'm coming in hot, Paul, because I just got done a 4-hour D&D session running the third session of the Slaver Lord series.
Yeah.
So I'm high on my charisma right now, and all kinds of other stuff. Thank you, Bacarius, for confirming that we're actually on, because we're in a certainly different setup than normal, and we were configuring technical stuff the last couple minutes. So yeah, here we are. We made it.
We did it. I mean, that's really the exciting bit, right? Is that we are actually here at a convention. It's a small one. It's about 25 people in a private house. It's bothering the crap out of me. I'm going to fix this.
Do you want the live frame here?
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Anyway, so amongst people playing games, wandering again at last.
You know, right? I mean, right this second, I'm going. We've been here for 3 days, and it's right this second I'm realizing, oh, now I get to talk to Paul now, because that itself actually hasn't happened. Yeah, so this was really nice. So the last, we do this annually, except for the last 2 years. So the last time we were together with all of our friends here was 3 years ago. And every single one of us who've come in have gone, this is really weird. And it is. So it is, conventions feel like fake news. Good, it says Ash. And yeah, it feels a little bit weird. It feels a little bit weird. Honestly, I got here earlier than normal before everybody else this time. And I needed a couple hours to, ease my way into the bathtub. And I'm glad. Normally I get here last, and there's like 20 people. I go, hey, there are everybody. And this time I could greet people one at a time, and it was kind of more digestible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. It's definitely. I definitely feel very out of practice. Mm-hmm. I forgot half the things I was supposed to bring, including the power cable to my laptop. So
that we're using right now.
Hopefully the battery lasts. All kinds of silly stuff. Yeah. But we freaking made it, man. Yeah. We're playing games. I'm running stuff that I've run before. Just I didn't have the time to. Yep. Which is good. I like practicing my stuff. I like testing my stuff. So I'm happy to rerun things and get a different perspective on how it plays for different groups. So that's nice.
Yeah.
What about you, Dan? What did you run?
So I normally run original D&D stuff, and a number of players this weekend remarked, like, wait, you're not just running D&D, you're running something else, which really rattled a number of people here. So I also ran, for the first time ever, a story type horror game, first time ever.
Shocking.
Using your draft Fearful Ends rules for your custom
coming to Kickstarter soon.
Yep, please look for that.
Yeah, sign up for the mailing list if you're interested at fearfulends.com.
Thank you for that reminder, Paul. And so between the two of us, we tested that 3 times this weekend, actually. Yeah. And I had a blast. I had such a good time running my first game of that sort. And of course, we have the best players here, and they're supportive, and they're helpful, and they're making the game run better. And honestly, that was the highlight for my weekend. Really? I was a little bit scared coming in, and I think I picked a good subject matter, and I was able to riff in a number of ways.
Great,
and that was great. It was such a blast to be able to run that story type horror game with Fearful Ends. Fearful Ends is great, Paul.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for providing that.
I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased. It's a game that's grown over time. Just started with a simple mechanic that I liked, and then eventually I started customizing some Savage Worlds rules. Max started using that system to run his own games, and he started calling it Paul Thulu. And it only dawned on me this weekend, after years of calling it Paul Thulu, that he missed the far more obvious Paul of Cthulhu. Why didn't he call it Paul of Cthulhu? Yeah,
but now it's Fearful Ends.
Ends. It's a full system in its own right. Because you tinker with rules long enough, eventually you're like, "What am I even playing this system anymore? What still remains of the original?"
Yep.
I hit that same problem with. I used to play Labyrinth Lord for my old school D&D, and I kept tuning it, and eventually I was like, "Am I still playing Labyrinth Lord?"
It's funny because I feel like somewhere there could be a biologist making a genealogical tree of all the different role-playing games, which are like branches off branches off branches off branches. And that's pretty much how new systems get invented. So
Yeah,
you're in good company, and you have a good product coming out. And there is a link. Thank you, Bacarius. There's a link to our chat right now. Is what's happening.
Interesting.
Right. Got it. Yep. To our live stream right now. Great. I'm sure later on there'll be so if you're watching this later on, I'm sure there'll be a link to the Fearful Ends site.
Yeah, great. So I ran 2 instances of that traditional horror games, including one that is a scenario that I hope to include possibly as a stretch goal for the actual Kickstarter when this thing finally makes it to Kickstarter.
And I will say it's among the scenario that Paul tested and is available for a stretch goal when the Kickstarter comes out is maybe the best experience I've ever had role playing. It's brilliant. And again, I've only played in actually 2 of those types of games, but that one session was jaw-droppingly, amazingly effective, and one of the best experiences I ever had. So, yeah.
Awesome.
So I hope that stretch goal does get met because people deserve to have that.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I hope so too. And then, like, let's not forget. I mean, as much as I love promoting my own stuff, let's talk about a little bit about your. We just played. We just ran a 3, and I got to play in it, which was I was not expecting to do that.
Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Module A3, Assault on the Eyrie of the Slave Lords. It had a full table, which is great.
Yeah,
right?
9 players.
After 2 years of pandemic, I had 9 players at the table, and which I love, maxed out, and that was awesome. That was, for me, that was great. Getting back into it, I was, I haven't played live games in quite a while, so I had a little rust to blow off.
Yeah.
But how did that feel on the other end?
It felt good to me. I enjoyed playing it. Again, I was originally signed up for a different game. There was a last-minute change. Yeah. I was happy to get in and play. Originally, I hadn't signed up for it because, of course, I'd read those modules. I knew I was like, I'm going to have to take a back seat and just sort of let the rest of the group push forward with it. But it was still quite fun.
Awesome.
Still enjoyed it. It was nice to play a little OD&D. I spent, besides running Fearful Ends twice myself this weekend, I played in a Fiasco game and a game of Thirsty Sword Lesbians.
Great.
Which is
that sounded awesome.
Powered by the Apocalypse game. So I was doing a lot of like very improv-y, loose story gaming. So it was nice to also do some old school, crunchy D&D.
Awesome.
Although I was stuck playing Fanstern, so I didn't really get to make many attack rolls.
Correct. Fanstern the Wizard. I enjoy having at the table playing a wizard, Paul, because you have frankly deeper knowledge of the OED book of spells, which is available at OEDgames.com. You'll find the link,
Excellent.
which I use for original D&D spells. And so you usually come in with like a really clever kind of bank shot spell at just the right time that I didn't see coming. That is usually really helpful to the rest of the team. So,
was there one in particular here that stood out for you?
There's so much just happened. So much just happened that I kind of just burnt a hole in my memory system.
Yeah,
so remind me what did you?
I mean, there were a couple of spells. I mean, definitely Fanstern is challenging because let's for anyone who's read the module, Fanstern is an illusionist, right? An AD&D illusionist. So it takes a little modification to adapt that character. And so basically, I've got no real direct damage spells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I had a lot of spells that are people-based, right? I had like Charm Person, Home Person, and facing a lot of monsters that were not people.
Yep, exactly.
So that was very challenging. And the one that jumps out at me is I did manage. There was a room with a big pit trap in the center, which we identified. Didn't want to trigger it. And then we had gelatinous cubes coming at us from multiple directions. And I feel like that happened a lot in this module in general. There's a lot of cases where you're forcing the party to string out in a line, and that means only like 1 or maybe 2 characters can actually get into the front to fight, and then a lot of the characters in the back of the line are like, nothing to do here. So I managed to pull out the whole portal spell on the pit trap to allow our fighters to get around. So I felt like I was doing a lot of that kind of stuff, a lot of just, support things. One of our fighters, this isn't even a spell, one of our fighters got stuck, his feet stuck to the ground, and so I rushed to his side and unlaced his boots. There you go, get out of here, man.
Yeah, I felt right. I felt that was great. I felt it was great. And it's one of those classic D&D things where it's not on your sheet, it's not a special power. It's something that's real world and concrete, and you had to think about how boots work. and that's what I personally really adore about original D&D is you have to think about the actual physical stuff and how it works.
Interesting.
And I'm great. And you unloose it, and it was for what it's. If you know that module, it was the human fighter, only known as Ogre, and he pulls out his feet and stinks out the whole room with the rest of the party.
Ogre.
I'll say a couple of things about this. I love running these old modules, and I love kind of exploring what's in them a little bit. And module A3 is frankly a little bit wonkier, right? So A1 and A2 and A3 get increasingly wonky.
Yeah. I mean,
so there's suspensions of disbelief that the players need to carry on.
Of the series, A3 is the one that I've avoided the most because I'm just like, I don't know. It's really weird. Yeah. I liked how you dealt with the area with the Minotaurs. Because that area, when I read that, I was this is just going to be really fussy to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of twisty corridors and the Minotaurs trying to do a real kind of, what's the name of that tactic? Sort of fire and retreat tactic. Yeah. That felt, when I read it, that felt really fussy to me. How did it feel running that?
Yeah. I wanted that to, I didn't want to get too bogged down on it. I read the same thing, and I was really worried about that area. That was my top area of concern. Yes.
Yep.
The other thing is I actually increased the danger of places in the module. To be honest, and the fact that there's one Minotaur, and you have a party of 9 5th level characters. I'm like, what kind of threat is that? So I actually quadrupled the number of Minotaurs just to make it halfway interesting. And then, frankly, what I did abbreviate because I had my eye on the clock was you've already beaten the Minotaurs, and then the whole exit situation has these tangled passageways with one-off crossbow bolt traps, which aren't super interesting. And that I hand-waved, and when the magic sword had to detect traps, I said, that just gets you out of the way. So the funny thing is Rebecca, is that... So that module is designed that in the last room you're supposed to lose. Right. Last room, and you actually do meet half of the slave lords. There's 5 slave lords there. They're all 10th or 11th level.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And there's a wizard and a fighter and a priest and stuff like that. And so the last area is just meant to overwhelm you, and yet nonetheless, other areas seem weak to me. So I increased the number of gelatinous cubes. I increased the number of Minotaurs.
Oh, interesting. You increased the cubes.
I did. There's only supposed to be 2, and I made it 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to come from both sides rather than just one or 3 sides. Yeah. So I was increasing the amount of danger in order to challenge you guys. I threw a lot of damage down. Stephen playing Ogre was down to 1 hit point at one point. Yep. I had you confused. I had some people paralyzed. And I swore to God I was going to kill at least half of you, if not TPK at the end. And today I was happy with that. It's like I'm going to TPK him at the end. It's going to set him up for Module A4. That's what's going to happen. Yep. And they friggin' beat all of my slave lords with no deaths.
Well, I think a lot of us were sitting on all of those. Like, I'll go back to the silly person spells, right? There was a lot of charm person, hold person, and those are the only people in the module. So we're like, oh, finally, humans let all the magic out. And it worked well. And that happens a lot for like our D&D games, actually, as we get to like the last boss and it's a wizard and you hit him with charm person, hold person. That tends to be part of it. And I was rolling saves, and there were the very last thing that happened, right? There was one more charm person spell, and I said, this high-level character needs a 7 to save. And I specifically said, of course I'm going to make this save. There's no drama here. And Stephen Buckley says, roll a 6. And I rolled a 6. Yep.
And that's how that ended. So you guys are playing super well. The module specifically says if the players conceivably manage to do this, that's quite a great group of players you have there. You should congratulate them. So congratulations. Yeah. So I like it. I think I made the right choice of actually increasing the peril in a couple of those. How did that compare? Because I know you ran the other half of A3 earlier, and I wasn't there for that. How did that compare? The similar, overall gestalt is similar, but I had to modify less. Right, the one right before it is less super wonky. The Minotaur area is far more concerning. Dealing with the high level NPCs at the end is more concerning. So it was somewhat easier to run the session right before that. And if you're really familiar with the module, I did snip the whole city skulking surveillance part.
Yeah,
They claim that they used that for the tournament at the time, and I do not
I
understand
can't
how that
imagine.
could possibly be a tournament
I don't know.
scenario.
That seems bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Well, good for you. Good choice. Good choice in sniffing that part out.
William has a question here. How did this all start? How does one go about setting up scheduling and logistics of a house con? I don't know if you want to deal with that.
It's tough. It started actually with our friend Adam's birthday. His wife set up a surprise birthday party for him where she invited a bunch of friends up to a vacation house in Maine, and he loves gaming, and so we just played a bunch of games.
Right.
And we had so much fun with it, we were like, well, let's do this again. Let's do this regularly. So we started doing that. It was a small group. It was not just 8 of us. We would rent a vacation house in the off season, as that's why we're out here on the Cape in April. And just the invite list grew and grew, and now we're at like 25 people. I do have some software that I now run for it. It's a little wonky and weird and
Paul,
highly customized.
You're underselling it, because we are all agog. We're all agog at we have the best we have the best convention scheduling software available to us that any of us have ever seen. And Paul wrote it all, and it's amazing. The nice thing is, does any other convention? I mean, you're saying that they used to do this by paper at Gen Con.
They did used to do it by paper in Gen Con, and I felt like that was a slightly better system. But it's still the traditional model of you divide up the days into slots. GMs say, I want to run this game at this time. There are 6 tickets, 8 tickets, whatever, and then they sell tickets. The nice thing about the old paper system was you would get a catalog, and you would fill out, here's my first pick, second pick, third pick for each time. Send that in, and probably some human sat at a desk and figured it all out, and it sounds miserable. I like that. I like the nature of sort of this asynchronous process of here's my picks, and then somebody says, okay, now I have all the information, and I'm going to build a schedule, as opposed to like where most conventions do these days, where you just sort of, all right, site's live, good luck, and people shove stuff into their cart, and it's just a free-for-all. It's like a Black Friday kind of feeling, right?
And it's this nightmare of like everybody has to get on, like for concert tickets. So at 12:01, 10,000 people all get online. The server crashes. I'm worried about my bandwidth.
It's brutal. It's brutal. My software is a little different in that it then tries to push this a little bit and say like, well, instead of, because probably most GMs don't really care when they run their games. What we do is we have them submit games without a time slot assigned. Players go in and pick their top choices and just rank the games. This is my first pick, second pick, third pick. And then I have an algorithm that builds out the schedule based on that. And we'll move games around and try to line them up such that you get the most optimal schedule as you can. I think that works because small numbers, right? This would only work for a small convention of like 50 or less people. And it works because we run a lot of games that everybody loves, right? Like you have to rely on the fact that like I'm going to rank out of the 20 games being played, I'm going to at least pick 10 or 12, right? More than double of what I can actually play. So I won't be too upset. Oh, I only got into 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Oh no. Drat.
And we can depend on people being here for the full 3 days. We basically know everybody's here for 3 days. So the whole menu's available. And it's really nice. Now, the reason, let me follow up. So you said you could probably only work up to about 50 people, because why?
Well, first of all, I never tested it at a much larger number. And second of all, I worry about the extremes where you get games where like everybody loves it, and so everyone picks it as their top pick, and now like a lot of people are going to be disappointed. And then you have other games that are less popular, which is, I always feel bad about that, because it feels like I'm saying like, oh, you're running a crappy game. But like, I don't know. It's, what do people have to go to pick on? They have like 3 lines of text, the name of a system, the name of a GM. That's it. It's not a lot of information to go on. So I think there's just a lot of luck at play there. But some GMs, unfortunately, end up with not a lot of people picking it. And so I just worry that with a much larger convention, stuff would pile up on the edges more.
Got it.
And then it would get weirder, and it would be even harder to guarantee people getting into some of their higher picks, just because it would do silly things like say, well, this game needs 3 to 6 people to play, or 4 to 6, or whatever the number is. I need at least 4 people in this game. Everyone ranked it low, but you got to go in. And then just picking, right? Could you imagine being presented with,
good point.
Here's a list of 100
Good
games.
point.
Pick your top.
Good point.
How many are you going to rank? What if some games don't get ranked at all?
Got it.
That worries me.
Got it.
Anyways, it was an interesting, unusual system. It is definitely geared at these smaller games. You can check it out if you want. It's at housecon.net. It's definitely kind of experimental software, and definitely takes a little explanation to your players to get to understand it. Frankly, I still think some folks coming here don't totally get how it works.
Oh, really?
There's always some.
Well,
there's always one,
okay.
at least one sort of weird edge case where somebody does something unusual, and I go, "Oh, really? Okay. Oh, geez, now I got it. Now I got to clean that up."
Okay.
But on the plus side, I've been doing it for probably over 10 years now, iterating on this software. So it's out there. Check it out if you want.
Yeah. We all adore it. It's the best convention experience that I have signing up for stuff. So yeah, it's nice.
I think that's going to be true though for small conventions. Regardless, I would recommend anybody who's interested in this sort of thing to just try it. Like get some friends together, go rent a house. The nicest thing about it, I think, is if you go to a smaller convention as opposed to like a big, like not like a Gen Con or a PAX East, but you go to something like Carnage on the Mountain or Total Con or the ones around here. But I'm sure there's one in Texas, right? North Texas.
Yeah.
There's several, I think, that are kind of on the smaller scale such that you get more of a sense of the people going and it becomes more of a community.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas like the big conventions are like just just a big show, right? It's like, wow, I'm going to overwhelm by the size and expanse of this thing. And I don't know anybody here. And it's just overwhelmingly large and exciting. Whereas a small con, it becomes like a kind of weird family reunion.
Yeah. I mean, it seems similar to me too, and I apologize. I hope I don't keep bringing this anecdote up over and over again. But from when I was doing a lot of music stuff and a lot of band stuff 10 plus years ago, same thing. I got off wanting to go to big concerts, and I got spoiled on going to small indie events that at the time would cost $5, and I could talk to the musicians, right? And you could have actual real relationships with everybody there. Actually converse with the musicians themselves, and I completely got spoiled with that experience, and I didn't want to go to big concerts again.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I feel like I hear that a lot from people who like to go to concerts, that like they enjoy the small venues more. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would recommend folks give it a whirl. Run your own little small con. I know it's a scheduling difficulty, but you can do trivial things. Like I've heard of conventions or gaming events like this where people just come prepared to run a game and they say, okay, well, which game are we going to run tonight?
Got it. Yeah.
Actually, frankly, that's the way the first HelgaCon worked.
Yes.
And the only reason I wrote software or started playing this stuff is I started realizing like, well, we're there for Friday night through Sunday afternoon, and we just lose all of Friday night to the logistics.
Exactly.
So how do I add a little bit of process up front to cut that out?
Yeah. We were conversing about like what should we play and when we do it and what do we do then. Right. Like that should be predetermined and not lose that time.
Yeah. I remember hearing about a comic shop that did a thing where they would run a game. They would have GMs come up and sort of pitch, here's the game I want to run, blah blah blah, give it a thing, and then they would just have the whole crowd of people kind of stand up and say like, okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Everyone point at the GM of the game you want to play.
Oh.
And they would just quickly like be able to eyeball and go, all right, enough people run this game, off you go. All right, you people go here. Okay. And then like the ones that are left are like, okay, well it's a little disparate, or maybe you're split up. Like, can we cajole you into a group to pick a thing? And
that would make me scary, like going that. But I guess if it works, it works. That's interesting. I would not have thought of that. I tend to overprocess.
Yeah, I definitely want to do advanced planning for things like this because I want to maximize our. Well, here's the funny flip side of that, right? Okay, this came up when I was talking to somebody that we've been doing this years and years, and some of the folks are no longer local anymore. So, there's a fair number of people that this is now the only thing we see them at.
Yeah, and they fly, and some people fly in.
Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, we're here for a whole weekend all together. We spend the majority of our time playing games and pretending to be other people. And there are these tiny windows. We really like maximize it down to like, we get an hour for lunch. You get 2 hours for dinner. That's it. And then we're going to play another game. Yeah. And so you get these tiny windows to like actually socialize and like catch up and be like, oh, you're a person. What do you do when you're not here?
Totally. And I feel like some of my best friends I only know here. Some of my best friends I've only met here and only hang out with them, and I enjoy seeing them once a year. And and some of us have online only friends now. But this is my HelgaCon only friends. My HelgaCon online only.
It's kind of become the self-perpetuating thing though, because I was noticing we have 25 people. We've had about 20 to 25 people for several years now. We kind of frankly, it's the number of people that fit in the house. But we have 3 new people this year. So people are circulating a little, right? Some people fall off, other new people come. And that's really nice. I like adding the new blood, and I'm sure that must be intimidating for the people who are new to come in and be like, oh, here's 20 people I've never met, and I'm just going to play games all weekend and go.
Yeah. Well, I drove up with Andre, and he fit. And to me, I was like, oh, I know him well, and I know everybody here well, and Andre has to go one by one introducing. I'm Andre. And everybody here is very welcoming, and we were like, you should have been part of the family all along. So find
something I will say about gaming in general. And I've seen this at all sized gaming events, which is that yes, maybe gamers tend to be potentially a little more introverted, a little more difficulty in large social situations. But you put us all together at a gaming event, and now there's this intrinsic thing to talk about, right? We don't have to make small talk. Well, what game did you play today? Oh, I played this game, right?
I was saying the exact same thing to somebody the other day. I was saying the exact same thing, is that we have this common thread of I guess like a lot of subcultures I think have this, but we have this common thread of something that we know that we're fundamentally, our brains are kind of working in a similar direction at least. And so that immediately makes it much easier to bring people in.
It's nice.
Now, just a little bit of side, I gotta say this, right? Every time I'm a player in a Paul Thulu type game, right, and I've played a number with Max and a number with you, right, every single time. Now you start off the game and you're saying we assume that in this existential horror game we expect everybody's going to die or break down mentally or lose their mind. Right. And I no, I do not. I am not expecting that. I'm trying to play to my best to game the system and win, and avoid damage and avoid mental stress to the best that I can. One of these games I'm going to win it. And ever to date, I'm pretty sure I've got a still 100% rate of being killed by other players. And I get near the end. And I feel like I'm doing pretty good. And one of the other players go mad and kill me. And now Adam Flynn's son joined that growing list of players. Apparently, everybody here is at some point going to have to kill me in a Fearful Ends game, because I still have 100% rate of everybody adding their list to the I killed Dan in Fearful Ends.
I think it's great that you do play it that way. I think a lot of players don't, and it's not the way the game is built, right? But I did want to make that an option in the game, right? That is, the mechanics do allow for here's your strategy. Here's how you would play the cards to try and avoid mental stress and survive. And frankly, it tracks with the inspirational material, right? You generally, the heroes in these stories, they're trying to survive, right? So it works well, I think, for that. Hey,
so Paul, how about we have an interview? I got an idea.
Great.
Let's have an interview right now.
Great. Let's slide a little over. Come on.
Get yourself. We'll squeeze in here. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Hey, everyone. This is Rebecca. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Rebecca, how long have you been coming to HelgaCon now?
Well, I started in the second year, so I guess, 11, 12, 13 years, however long it's been going on.
This is the 13th one. I would love to say it's the 13th annual convention, but of course, we missed 2 years.
Right.
It's
the 13th.
It's the 13th.
Lucky number 13.
Yeah, there you go.
So the 13th was the one that got delayed.
Right.
Rebecca, and of course, you jumped in kind of head first as soon as we started playing and taking on some of the logistical stuff, specifically around food prep, which has just been a huge load off my shoulders. So thank you so much for that.
Rebecca is the kitchen manager here for the weekend, and you also run games and you're also playing. So sometimes you're doing all three at the same time.
Yes. Sometimes I am.
How does that work?
Less effectively than I would like for it to work. I have definitely found that it's best if I try to only do one roll at a time.
Got it. Got it.
So, luckily, most of the food prep work happens prior to the convention. Planning the meals, getting people to sign up, buying the food, and then once I'm here, then it's mostly done, except for meals that I am personally preparing.
So Rebecca's been like completely invaluable as like one of the three people basically running the event. Really, you'd be vice president of Helga Con if we had.
I'm VP of food. Okay,
right,
yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's anybody watching the show who's interested in running this kind of thing for themselves. I would say that like my experience is most people do want to pitch in and they do want to help, but they don't want to be the person organizing things and making decisions. So if you can find one or two people to help with that task, then it's pretty easy then to push it down and say like, okay, great, well, I'm going to manage food, but who wants to volunteer to cook on Friday night? Who wants to volunteer to cook on Saturday morning? And people step up.
And I would like to say, if there's anybody out there who thinks they might be willing to take on that supervisory role, but you're nervous about it, there are some tricks. And once you've done it once, if you save all of your notes, I have a spreadsheet that I just copy and reuse every year. And so I don't have to reinvent the wheel every year. And you get a sense of, how much food do you need to buy for 25 people and whatnot. So if you've got a cook who says, hey, I really want to help out, but I have no idea how to shop for 25. I have no idea how much of whatever I need. There are things that you learn when you've done this and you keep those notes. And so you're like, oh, well, 2 years ago we bought way too much. And so now I know not to do that.
That's super smart. And I will say that you were both in the Against the Slavers D&D game that I was just running. And so, nowadays I have a particular threshold of number of players at my table. So yesterday when I had 6 players, I didn't ask for this, but today I table 9 players. And with that, I do ask for a caller or a leader of the team. And so I said, does anybody want to nominate or volunteer to be the caller of the team? And basically the whole table just pointed at Rebecca and said, you should be, Rebecca's the caller. And like everybody, it was like, you volunteered, and then multiple people seconded. It was like, yes, obviously Rebecca should be the caller. So you also organized the amazingly successful winning D&D team in Moduli 3 that would have qualified you for the championship tournament in 1980.
Fantastic.
So good job on that.
Excellent.
I was specifically directed to congratulate you on that in the module text. And I'm a man of the text, so yes.
It was a pleasure. That was a really fun game.
Awesome. What else? What other highlights are there for you, Rebecca? I mean, I don't want to just talk about logistics. Like, what games did you love playing?
Oh well, I mean, Dan's games are always so much fun. I'm sorry I didn't get to play in any of your games, but you've gone all horror, and I don't like horror, so I'm afraid we'll be ships passing in the night.
Girl, it's a temporary thing. I think I'm just mostly trying to test the game I'm trying to publish. So we'll get back to
your brother's game. Troika, I think is the system. That was hilariously fun. Super bizarre. I got to play, I decided I was sort of a singularity, a toroidal singularity. I mean, that was just a wacky game. We had wacky hats and a lot of laughter. That was a lot
Stephen
of fun.
told me about that game, actually. He came in last night and he said, I came up with a very unique character, I thought, and I did this and I did this. And then Rebecca came in, and she's a non-speaking space toroid, and he's like, "Oh, that blew my unique idea completely out of the water."
That's great.
I can't take full credit for that. The background that I was given was very vague and ominous, and said I was born in the depths of space or something like that. So that's where that came
great.
from. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's great. Awesome. Well done. What did you run? What did you run for games this weekend?
So I have in the past run sort of more traditional games, Dread and some D&D things, but this year I ran baking and board games, where I had a bunch of recipes I wanted to try out, and I figured 4 hours was a good time to do a bunch of cooking for a bunch of hungry gamers, and then meanwhile we had a table set up with some board games, and so people were playing board games, and I was mostly kibitzing on the board games, and while I was baking. I'm thinking in the future I may do a little less baking and a little bit more board gaming. But people said that they kind of liked having an opportunity for a somewhat more casual, interactive environment.
I had that fairly high on my list. I didn't get into that, but I actually had that fairly high on my list.
Yeah, it's it makes sense, right? There's a lot of this weekend is kind of pedal to the metal, as much gaming as you can. So I could see the desire for like a more chill.
Right. Yeah, board games are nice because you could say play in a board game that takes 45 minutes or an hour and still have time to take a nap or go for a walk or something like that. So,
did you have specific games picked out that you wanted to bring to that were going to fit that niche for you?
Yeah, I mean, I brought about 6 different games, and they ranged from Fire Tower, which is the ultimate, all versus all. You're trying to burn down each other's fire towers. To we played Azul. I didn't have any cooperative games since most of the RPGs that we were doing this weekend were cooperative. And then I just let the players pick. So I think they played Parks and a couple of rounds of Azul. Now that was interesting because when my husband and I play Azul, we're pretty generous with each other. We try not to screw the other one over, and we just kind of focus on our own goals. And the players yesterday were the exact opposite. They were trying as hard as they could to make the other players take penalties, and that was not something that had occurred to me. So
great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I find it's always interesting to me. I think sort of picking the right board game for the right setting and the right group of people. Yeah. And I seem to recall you had a pretty big range of potential number of players to sign up for that. And
yes.
So did that curb your selections? Were there cases where you're like, well, we don't need this board game because I don't have 10 people here?
No, when I've done this in the past, because I've run a board game session here at HelgaCon in the past, and I think one time we had like 7 or 8 players. We just had 2 games going at the same time. So I figured as long as I brought enough games, either everyone could play in one or could break up into a couple.
Cool. And where you were positioned there, that was so. Me running a horror game for the first time myself, I had half a mind to like pick a place that was out of sight mostly, so other people weren't seeing me screw it up, and instead, rather, I was right in the central position, about 10 feet away from where you were doing that. So while you were doing the baking board games, I was personally yelling and expostulating and cursing and doing all kinds of blasphemous stuff, and people would like show up with like a cupcake or whatever and just like hang out in the doorway going, yeah, that's about this right.
Oh, it was fantastic because Dan was running that game and he sounded like Edgar from Men in Black. Because I think you were playing like an alien or something, right? And so he's all like, we have brought you these gifts, and we were commenting on that in the kitchen while we were
I totally didn't think of that as an illusion, but yeah, that was what I was channeling.
It was totally Edgar in the Edgar suit.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Awesome. Good observation.
I mean, I know that you guys are the ones who do this all the time, but I'm curious, what are your favorite things about running HelgaCon?
I wasn't prepared to be interviewed.
Well, what's your favorite thing about running?
What's happening?
Oh gosh. I mean, we were talking earlier about the community aspect, and that's for me is really just seeing all your lovely faces again, and like it's become a touchstone, right? It's case there's many of you, yourself included. This is the only event I get to see you at now. Hopefully that changes, coming out of COVID, maybe. Yeah.
We still have to run Dan's All Wizards campaign.
Right. Thank you for the reminder on that. Right.
That's another interesting thing that's come up. I keep talking about this because I kind of love this idea, and so I'm trying to like get it into the back of people's brains. But there was this notion that we run these games at this convention, and there's, you look at the list and you're like, there are 12 awesome games, and I only get into 5, and that's right. There's all these other awesome games that got run that I totally missed. Like, what about a B-rolls session? We'll do like a midway 6 months down the road. Everybody just run the same. We'll just do over. We'll run the same stuff again.
We need like a HelgaCon South.
HelgaCon South. Is that what it is? Just a chance to get into the games that you missed the first time around. So that I think that would be fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. I mean, this weekend I really liked getting an opportunity to run my first story type horror game. It was it was a lot of fun. It was nice to get back in, blow the rust off, try out some D&D house rules that I've had on the books and not really get a chance to play, and just see really, really good role playing players beat all my stuff. Yeah, awesome. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to get some more D&D back into my
Good.
life.
Good. I'm glad to hear you say that.
Get the Fearful Ends out the door, and
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Get some more.
Yeah, you got a lot of cool stuff coming up with that.
Yeah,
so we're all looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Yeah. How's the battery life doing on the computer?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. I'm gonna just take a look. You continue.
Great.
Great. Yeah.
Just we're keeping an eye on the limited battery life we have, so we don't have this get caught off and us unable to stop it and have an ongoing YouTube Twitch stream with nothing happening for
never ending
a day.
That would be pretty bad.
Yeah. It's struggling a little. So maybe we should start to wrap things up. And any final thoughts about HelgaCon there, Dan?
Glad to be back. I'm glad that the travel we from New York we did in a better way. So 4 of us came up a day early, and we weren't rushing, and we were able to have a little bit more conversing time on Friday. I was able to hang out with you, which was super nice.
Yep.
So probably I would like to come up like a day earlier in the future. Like that. I mean, so many other great games this weekend, right? That we haven't talked about. So obviously we have 5 slots, and I run 3. Do you run 3?
I run 2.
You run 2?
I actually gave myself a hard limit of 2 many years ago.
Really?
Because it just between running the logistics and just being the point man, right? It's not like there's always some amount of things where people come to me. This year was toilet paper, surprisingly. We had a moment of like, oh no, there's no more toilet paper in the house. What do we do?
Last night, I was playing with you, and multiple people came up and asking about the toilet paper problem, and they were all wearing beanie hats. they were in a game of Max's, and every single one of them were wearing propeller beanie hats, and we're like, "Where's the toilet paper?" And we're like, "We're working on it."
Yeah. So I just try not to overload myself because it's a pretty exhausting.
Okay, that's smart. All right.
Anyway, that's my excuse for only running 2 every year.
Got it.
I've also, I think, finally learned the lesson of like I always when I run horror games, I try to target them to run at night because I'm like, oh, night is spooky, and I'm realizing that by Saturday night I am beat. And I am not giving the right level of energy to horror game that it deserves.
Yeah.
Well, and Paul, I would argue that setting a limit for yourself is not only wise for your step up and run. I mean, when I added my game in, bake games. I mean, this was not. The board games part was 0 effort. The baking was a lot of effort, deciding what I wanted to make and getting the stuff. But that I put on myself. But getting other people to say, "Hey, I can step up and I can run a game," and then you get, my husband ended up running this board game, but he ran it as an RPG, and everybody had a great time. And he wouldn't have thought to do that if it was already full up. So I think that there's some, advantage in kind of forcing the delegation, forcing other people to step up and run, new ideas.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that is good. Yeah, it is nice to give that opportunity for new GMs to, or I wouldn't. Your husband's hardly a new GM,
but he was running a new thing.
Yeah. Give people space to experiment. That's really what the convention's about, right? Is I don't know. For me, it's about experimenting with stuff. Refining, tuning, learning. I don't know. Every year I come away with like, yep, next year going to do it totally differently.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you guys have mentioned this already, but I mean, one thing that struck me this year was we had our first sort of intergenerational HelgaCon in the sense that we had the son of one of our long-term players has finally reached the age where we decided he could come, and he came, and
kill me in Fearful Ends.
Oh, did he?
Like everybody else
join the grand tradition of killing Dan in a horror game.
Yeah. Every single time, because I'm trying to win those. I'm trying to beat those, and every single time I get killed by another player, and this time it was him.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining the family. Great.
Keeping the tradition
Join
going.
the list. Wonderful. So you 2 guys are much better tea builders than I am. So those were a lot of high wisdom thoughts right there. And so don't listen to me. Listen to them.
Well, before we run out of juice, we should wrap this up, Dan. So thank you everyone for joining us. I know it's a little hodgepodge. We're definitely experiencing, I think, a little little mental from an intense weekend of gaming.
I'm still cooking, baby.
Yeah.
I'm still hot.
Okay, great.
In about half an hour, I will collapse.
Yeah. If we touched on anything that you'd like more details about, if you have more questions about running something like this yourself, we mentioned a game that you would love to hear more details on, mention it in the comments here on YouTube. We would love to hear from you. And maybe that'll launch a topic down the road.
We would. And if you happen to be new to the Wandering DMs stream, please look for us on social media sites such as Twitter and Twitch and Facebook and YouTube and GitHub and TikTok, even though there's nothing there right now. And we do have the handle Wandering DMs on all of those sites. So look for us there and you'll get updates about upcoming shows.
Yeah. If you prefer to listen to us in podcast-only format, you can get those podcasts at wanderingdms.com and various podcast carriers like iTunes and Google Podcasts, etc. If you are listening to this podcast right now on one of those sites, please stop and take a moment to rate and review us on that site. That helps other users of that site find us, and we really appreciate it.
We really do. And, of course, big thanks for our show and everything we do here.
I totally just accidentally hit the credits button too soon there, Dan. Sorry.
What? Paul, I've got to thank our patrons. Because, Paul, if it weren't for our patrons, we couldn't do what we're doing at the Wandering DMs channel. And if you're in a position where you would like to join them, please go to wanderingdms.com/Patreon.
Please do.
And you'll see our different tiers and stuff and merch and access to a private Discord server. And normally we have continue the conversation on a private Discord server right after the show. Today we're going to have to skip that because some of us have travel plans and we will have to quickly book out of here right after the show is over. So unfortunately we'll have to wait for next week for our normal Discord chat.
Yeah. Join the Patreon and get your name in the credits, which you'll see once at the end of the show or twice when I accidentally press the button too.
And of course, look for our normal shows coming up this week. I will be back with Dan Plays Games from the Elder Times late night Eastern on Tuesday, trying to finish the Fantasy Empire games in the Known World or Mestera. And then TDR will be back, and I'll be back on Thursday for that stream. You're really slacking off, Paul. I'll be back on Thursday to continue our Cyberpunk stream, and then, of course, we'll be back next week. So that's what's happening. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for running the games.
It's such a delight to have great players like you guys and everybody that's here.
The slave loads are going down next year.
And I hope everybody that's watching has halfway as great players as I have. I am so blessed here. And so join us next week again for another thought-provoking discussion.
We'll see you then.